Hello, everyone. Today we have a student who just recently graduated from high school and will be attending Yale University in the fall. His name is Braden. And Braden, can you go ahead and just briefly introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. So my name is Braden Wong. I just recently graduated as a senior, as Christian mentioned, and I'm going to be attending Yale University this fall. I'm thinking about majoring in economics and computer science as a joint major, or data science and statistics. Um, yeah, that's
That's
basically my
awesome.
introduction. Yeah,
Perfect. So, obviously, Braden, you mentioned that you're thinking about doing those specific major combinations. So, I guess first and foremost, why are you deciding on those specific majors to study in college? Like, what led to you being interested in studying those specific fields?
sure. So I definitely have always been around computers ever since I was around maybe like second grade. My uncle
Mhm.
brought me these programming textbooks, and I wasn't very good at it. Of course, when you start out, you're not that good, and I did a
Yeah.
lot of poor practices. But merely being exposed to it at a very young age made it so that it was really easy to absorb the material. And I really like reverse engineering things, and I think that's
Mhm.
really prevalent in software because you basically reverse engineer, and that's how you learn all your practical skills.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, and I also I really enjoy economics because most people think economics is like, oh, it's very general humanities focused study, but it's actually incredibly mathematics based, and it's
Exactly.
also the study of decision making. I really like a lot of the concepts that they include, like opportunity cost, right? And of course,
Mhm.
they really are interesting because they help you maximize decisions, not just necessarily in the macro scale or micro scale, but on a personal level when you're trying to make decisions yourself. I'm kind of interested also in stats and data science because machine learning is pretty hot, and I don't want to be just one of those like everybody's going into machine learning. Of course, it's a very popular field, but
Mhm.
I'm mostly interested in the economic implications AI can have. We know that we're automating jobs a lot. I'm centrally most interested in data ownership because the new value that's being added to data and the fact that everyone creates data means that there is an extra source of income somewhere for almost everybody who's living around the planet. So like the question is, what if you could be paid to consume? I think that we place a lot of emphasis on output, for example GDP in economics, but
Uh,
there's not as much on input. And it seems like if you were able to pay people for rewarding as like learning something new or watching videos, it seems like there's no longer the opportunity cost of having a job isn't you're unemployed, you don't have a job. It's that
mhm.
there's a steady, stable, um, there's a stream of cash that you can still always go fall back to if
Mhm.
you are somehow not able to find work.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, and I definitely agree with you on the fact that especially with data science, I know data science is a really growing field in today's world, and
Mhm.
obviously with everything you mentioned. And I think also the fact that our world is being technologically advanced. We're growing technologically in like exponentially right now in today's world, so it's
Mhm.
become a much more popular and prevalent field to study. And I agree with you that yeah, it's a lot to relating to societal aspects. So I guess to follow up on that, would you say that I guess your interests are also driven by like how things are changing in society, or is this like stuff that you're really interested in?
Yeah, I think of course for everyone it's a mixture of both.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely feel that because it's such a hot topic, everyone wants to
Yeah,
go there. Of course, in
exactly.
the past, there are other topics that are very hot. For example, you could say the space race. Everyone wanted to be an engineer back then. In fact, we still have a little bit of a legacy with such a heavy calculus focused curriculum, which I mean,
Yeah,
that's a different separate issue. But
yeah.
nowadays, there's a calculus race that's still pervasive in America, even though I feel like statistics and linear algebra is very important. It's in fact
Mhm.
even more important in artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
But I think yes, part of it is I'm going with the times, but part of it's also because it hasn't been explored as in depth. So the potential for innovation is much greater. I feel like I mean we have saturated the market, but we haven't saturated with enough talent yet. So I think
Yeah.
that there's always more talent that's going to be needed, and the whole idea that you can, if you're a software engineer, you're able to employ software that affects literally the entire world, and that can be done by one person if they really wanted to. There's just such a huge implication of impact that you can have that I think is really enticing, especially if you're into innovation.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. And I really like how like unique, I guess, your story is for that because a lot of people they don't know what they want to study or like how to relate it. But I like how you're mentioning that. Yeah, it comes from a twofold effect. You're looking at society like yeah, you do have to stay current with the times. There are prevalent things that are going to happen in like the status quo or whatnot. But at the same time, if you're interested in it, go for it. Like you can see that obviously you're very interested in it, so that's why you're so passionate about talking about the topics. And it seems like you've really done your research and information searching for it. So yeah, I think that was a great explanation for that. I guess, moving on to the next part, let's talk about Yale. So I guess, when you were making your college decision process, why did
Mhm.
you choose Yale to attend in the coming fall?
All right, so yeah, the story of how I first visited Yale is actually very, very funny. So
Hmm.
when at the time of acceptance, Yale was my parents' dream college, or like they really wanted me to go there.
Uh,
Of all the colleges, they really like I guess vibed with Yale the most. When we first visited Yale, I was in a summer program at the University of Pennsylvania, so
hmm.
we might as well just like visit all the East Coast schools. And we went to Yale the first day. Um, we came on a day where we came right after the last tour closed, so we had to stay at a hotel, and it was in a
Hmm.
kind of rough part of the neighborhood, so we had a really, really bad first impression. In fact, like we were talking, we should just leave because like I don't want to wait tomorrow, like it's going to cost like, well, why don't we just go on, move on? I think our next one was Harvard, so it's kind of funny. It's quite hilarious.
Yeah.
Especially yeah. And then the next day, of course, we go there. um,
Mhm.
we're just visiting the campus, and then we go on the campus tour, and we're just blown away because the one thing that was so different, and this was something that we observed in the coming months, is that Yale presenters compared to other college presenters are extremely, extremely persuasive, and they have
Mhm.
such this enthusiasm that we really didn't see in any other school. Most tour guides are just like, oh, this is something you like, this is this is that.
Mhm.
At Yale is very engaging, and they also explain, how they directly helped students. And Yale seemed like a kind of almost like it blended the cultures of Harvard and Princeton in the sense it's very undergraduate focused, but it's also incredibly, incredibly vested in research.
Yeah.
There are stories of like people who just, there's a story of Professor Nordenhouse. He had a Nobel Prize and he received it, right? But he
Mhm.
delayed his reception party by a day just so he could teach class at Yale. Like that was
Oh,
something
wow.
that is like when I heard that, I was like, that's crazy. I
Yeah.
think I got the details kind of straight on that, but like
Mhm.
the idea that a lot of professors who teach our grad school just teach undergrad for free. Like they don't get paid. They just enjoy it. Yale selects professors that, of course, very nice, but also they're very student focused. And I thought that was very, very interesting. Um, yeah, it was very funny because Yale had a really poor first impression.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of like me. I tend to make I usually start a little bit low on my first impressions and I work my way up.
Yeah.
And also, I think the biggest thing was also that Yale is just such a happy place. It's kind of hard to explain how like the culture is different, and I feel like almost a sense because Yale. I mean, I think most of us agree Yale lives in the shadow of Harvard in a lot of ways, right? I think
Mhm.
people at Yale are much more likely to explain what are the great parts about Yale and to be really enthusiastic about it.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel that if you're in a school that's very tied to prestige, you may simply fall back on the fact that you went to that school. Like if you
Yeah.
ask Yale students what's their favorite part of Yale, they can tell you a lot of things. But a lot of
Mhm.
people in Harvard, it could be just the fact that they went to Harvard. That's enough for them. And I feel like Yale is committed to really prove their worth.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. And obviously, we're not roasting Harvard or any of the other Ivy
Yeah,
Leagues here.
no, no,
No,
not at all.
no, we're not roasting. We're not
Great
roasting.
schools, great schools.
Don't sue us. We're not. That's like not cool. But no, I agree. I think it's kind of been, in all due respect, with the Ivy League schools, they're obviously really great schools.
Hmm.
They're called Ivy Leagues for a reason. But I think also when people are applying to Ivy Leagues, we there's worry sometimes for like especially Asian American students who are pressured,
Hmm.
like there's a lot of family pressures or whatnot to get into those schools, that a lot of times that impression is then put on the name, like you mentioned earlier. You could attend, again, just an example, but you could attend Harvard and be like, oh, I'm falling back on the name that I went to Harvard University. But
Hmm.
even as a student, even if you get into the school, that's one thing. But what did you make of it once you get into the school?
Hmm.
Obviously, can you be passionate about what you're talking about? And like you mentioned at Yale with the tour guides being super persuasive, and you can see the high student engagement and the commitment from professors. Like if you're teaching for free, you know that person's passionate about talking about it, so you're going to get a good education from it. So I think definitely that's another thing. A lot of people think that you should go to the Ivy League just because, oh, it's an Ivy League, it's a name school. Harvard's the best, or like Yale's really good, like kind of like that. But we have to consider that there's a lot of underlying factors that there's for a reason make the school great. You just can't focus on the
Hmm.
name itself. And I definitely agree with you on that. First impressions are going to be kind of rocky with everything. I agree. I think my first time visiting USC, I was like, it's bricks everywhere. Like I was just like,
Yeah,
it's like the floor is made of brick. How am I? Like,
relatable.
I saw. I think no. I swear to God, like the first day I went into like a campus tour as well too. Saw a dude skateboarding. He was on the bricks too, and he just like he knocked out so fast. I was like, wow, like that's not fun. But I started to get and appreciate it. It was just kind of like an aesthetic beauty that I really got used to. But no, I agree with you on that. I think obviously for those that had the opportunity to visit a college, it'd be really nice to get to see it. But obviously with COVID or whatnot, or financial situations, not many people get the opportunity to do so. But I would say if you have the chance to, it's definitely a worthwhile experience to get to go and actually engage yourself. And like you mentioned, it's hard to explain the environments of why it makes it so good. Like once you get to a school, you just click with it. Like, you know, you just click with the vibe. And I think if you can't explain why you fit in, that's actually a good thing, because it's just like, it's so natural to everything that you want in a social environment. So yeah, that's awesome. I guess let's, obviously deciding Yale is one thing, but the process of, getting accepted or getting to where you are today is a whole nother thing. And obviously that bases off the college application process. So I guess if you could, for you, I guess in general, can you summarize your entire college application process? Whether that be about researching, time management, balancing everything that you were doing. Like, I guess holistically, how would you describe your college application process?
Sure. I would say definitely at the very beginning. Again, I have a very strange, I guess, background when it comes to college applications. Ever since finishing the UPenn summer program, I was really invested in this specific program at UPenn called the M&T program. And so I ED'd there. And one thing about ED is that it tends to do is it really sets your heart and your mind in the same place, because you can't have cognitive dissonance, right? You're literally about to commit, and so your entire body, like, it basically physically and mentally commits to everything. And I remember still on the ED day, release day, like, I got a rejection. I was in the middle of an application, and I literally had to wipe my tears away and rewrite an entire essay the night before it was due. It was so crazy. It was so crazy, and it's so sad. Because I was very, very devastated, because the program definitely helped. Like, the summer program definitely helped out my chances of admittance, and I felt like at the time it was a very great fit because it was interdisciplinary. Little would I know that Yale kind of offers that, which is something that's kind of low key in the sense, because Yale doesn't even have minors, but so people choose to double major more frequently. It's a very interesting phenomenon. But anyway, at the time, that program was supposed to be having a dual degree in engineering and business. So at the time, I thought that'd be really, really great. It'd be a great fit for me. Something that's very, I think, common among most people is that they really, really set their heart in one place, wherever they're accepted or wherever they want to be accepted. So my advice is, you can physically and mentally commit in that decision. You should be putting in the hours and the mental, like, fortitude, like, strength into that, but you shouldn't be emotionally investing in it. The reason why is emotional. There's no real point in emotionally investing in it if you consider that it's almost a gamble in a lot of ways, and that the side effect of emotional investment is that you're devastated if you don't get it, and that definitely affected my ability to write applications later on. Also during the summer, I mean, everyone tells you to start working your essays early. Definitely for me, it was much harder. I think actually the people who worry or are more concerned about college actually tend to start later, just because you start early and you can't stand, you're right. Like, you feel like you're doing poorly. And I think part of the way you overcome writer's block is you have to accept how trash your first applications may be. Because, I mean, you evolve very quickly during the college application process. 2 months after I wrote my application, I look back on it, I feel like a different person, right? Because there's such a sheer volume of new experiences that you're going to experience during that time of stress, but a different kind of stress that you're used to, because you're considering long-term stresses. They're not short-term, like, oh, if you don't do it, it's done, like, it's over. No, it's like, with college especially, if you don't get to go somewhere, that decision could last for several years. It's not a bad thing, of course, but you have to be very, very cognizant of it. So I think for me, in general, my whole college application, especially in the beginning, was very, very rough. But in the end, after you get accepted and you're really, really happy, like, it all works out in the end. And I grew a lot from it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think just to touch up on the first thing, like you mentioned with ED, I think ED, you're already committing so much to it, because for those that don't know, basically an early decision is binding. In difference, like, early action and whatnot. If you apply to a school ED and you get accepted, you pretty much have to commit already. So obviously, for those that plan to ED to a school, you gotta be sure that 100% you're gonna commit no matter what. Like, if you get accepted, obviously if you get accepted, that means you're gonna commit to it. So I think, like you mentioned, ED is so binding because kids who apply ED really, really want that school. So they're going to be physically, mentally, and emotionally binded and connected to that. So yeah, obviously, I think that is very true. And I think I agree with, you mentioned one thing, like, you have to accept the fact that your beginning applications are going to be trash. I totally agree with you on that. And I think the funny thing is that the beginning applications are for the applications that you really want to go to. For example, when I was applying to, like, Stanford for, it was like REA, right? That was the first application I did, because, I mean, it was due the earliest, but it was a school I wanted the most.
Yeah.
But when I was doing the application, in comparison to my other applications, even for schools that aren't considered like ranked any better than, because Stanford's really up there anyways. Like
Hmm.
obviously schools that were way below it, I realized that my essays for that were a lot better than what I had for Stanford because I developed a lot
Hmm.
more as a person over time. Like I grew. You really do grow. And I think it was maybe about a week or two ago, I actually bothered to look back at all my college senior
Oh
application essays.
gosh.
I recommend
Ooh.
you do this. I recommend a year from now, go back and
Yeah.
look at the essays. But I look back and I was like, oh my God, I was so cringe in those essays because you're changing as a person. Like what
Hmm.
I thought was pretty good in my mental state at senior year is so different once you've actually, I think, obviously you haven't had this experience, but for those, once you get into college itself, you're going to realize how much you could have changed in high school and you
Yeah.
probably still would have ended up the same place, but you would probably have been in a more consistent and happier overall mental state. So
Hmm.
yeah, definitely read your essays a year from now and see how that turns out. It's a shock factor, but yeah, no, I
Yeah,
definitely
that's
agree.
so true.
Yeah, exactly with all of that. And I think Braden, another thing I want to touch up on, just regarding that college application process is obviously you were a very busy student. You're very active in extracurriculars. Obviously academics as well too. So how did you balance all that? Because you have to manage
Hmm.
extracurriculars, you have to manage your academics, you have to manage college applications. On top of that, you still have a social life to maintain with friends, and you have family matters as well too. So how was your version of juggling all of those different factors?
Yeah. I think emotional. The thing about productivity in general is like you should be managing your energy, not your time. I think that's a
Mm,
very good guideline to go by. There's a lot of other things like principles, but most people try to think about time and then they think they're just too busy. That's a pretty poor excuse. The reason being is that time really productivity is not based around time. It's based around energy and priorities. If I told you something like you have to get this done by tomorrow or else you might die, like just say that, right? You
uh,
would probably sacrifice some sleep for it. Like
yeah.
it's not like you don't have any time for it. In general, when people say they don't have time, they really mean I have other things that I feel are much more higher priority, or I just don't want to sacrifice that time.
Mm,
But the fact is, even though there's only 168 hours in a week, you definitely are not using all of them to their potential, and that's fine. Productivity is like you should be thinking that your productivity is around 30 to 40%. Like for every hour, like it's not high. It's definitely not high because most people, especially, just don't focus when they work. But that means that you can really increase your productivity just by dedicating an extra hour of focused work a day. Like if you really just imagine daily you only spend 2 hours working with like real extreme focus. If you added an extra hour and you just set it aside, that's you literally you've increased it by 50%, and
mm,
that's an enormous gain just by pledging to set that up. I think, but the other thing that really does hurt productivity, I think, this is the emotional aspect. I want to touch on this because I feel most people have, at least during high school, tried to tackle scheduling and all the other things,
yeah,
but
for sure.
it really affects your energy. Performance anxiety is not a good thing. Do not have performance anxiety. In fact, one of the best things I guess EDs teach you is that when you have an ED application and you know it's your only one for this short-term deadline, you have this crushing performing anxiety and you really want to make it good. Now, if you get rejected, you realize in retrospect after completing the next few applications that all of that anxiety was unwarranted, or at least didn't need to be there. And in fact, that it hindered your ability to think clearly because you were thinking in a much more of a personal frame, like an I frame versus the their frame. Like you're not able to visualize how the colleges are reading your application because after the date and you look back on the application even a month later, you realize, oh wow, this there's a lot of mental clouding that does happen. So I would say in productivity, yes, you should optimize your priorities, and you should ruthlessly prioritize. In fact, you should be cutting away the things that aren't benefiting you. And the biggest thing is it's not just things that are hurting you, but also things that just don't help you.
Mhm.
There's a lot of extracurriculars you might have, and as you go through high school they won't have as much of an importance, and you have to really think, where do I want to be in the next 10 years? And you have to really ruthlessly prioritize. The human mind is very good at picking up knowledge that it needs later on, and very good at also dropping anything it doesn't need. You tend to see this in classes a lot. That's why when you practice something, you learn it much better than if you just memorize it. It's because you were forced to use it, and then your body is able to recognize that there might be some need to store that information later on. That's why I think practical learning is really important too. So when you're in practice being efficient, practice being like productive, but definitely prioritize heavily.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that you're saying. I really like how you touched up on this fact that productivity is not definitely necessarily a time thing. It's like you mentioned, it's an
Mhm.
energy constraint. This actually kind of brings me back to when I was still a senior in high school, and I think you were in your junior year. Remember when we were doing that time management panel
Oh
for
yeah.
wellness in school? And one thing that you actually taught for me in that panel that I actually still keep with me is you mentioned this one statement, and it went along the lines of the fact that if you take this concept of time doesn't really care about what you're doing, because no matter what happens, whether it's good, whether you're being productive or unproductive, time will continue to go on. It does not
Yeah.
care about what you're doing. And it kind of reminded me of like when you were mentioning the entire energy and versus time thing. Like that's definitely a true statement. I think obviously this is a little bit more deeper than just like college application, but it is true. Like when you consider your productivity of being able to balance everything and trying to
Hmm.
manage everything to make sure that you're being efficient in every single aspect, um, it's not just because you didn't have enough time. It's just a matter of like, oh, what was your energy stakes? How are you actually using the time that you actually do productive work? And
Hmm.
realistically, it's true. We're not. No one can claim that they're perfectly like 100% productive like every hour that they're working. It's true. We have moments where we end up checking our phone, going on YouTube for like a bit, if not a couple hours. So productivity goes all over the place. But yeah, it definitely, I think it was just nice for me. I think I just wanted to mention that because it definitely brought me back to when we had that panel. Like mentioned, like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
time.
still remember. I think the quote was, "Time is blind to context, but context gives time value." So the
Exactly.
idea,
Yeah.
right? So the idea was like, regardless of the context, time's going to keep on going on. But at the same time, what I'm also trying to add to that statement, I guess a year later, is that you shouldn't be trying to optimize around time. You should be optimizing around context, because
Exactly.
only context will give you time value. You're not going to get. It doesn't matter if you're trying to save time if you're not going to spend it wisely. Time has no latent value. It has to be used to something that will actually further your agenda or your purpose.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I think it was just funny because like I know we were the ones on the panel giving information to a lot of high school students, and I was looking at
Yeah.
you, I was like, yeah, he's teaching me a lot more than what I was planning to say. So no, no, it's actually something I kept with me, and I think it really does. It really is an important thing. It kind of made me look
Mhm.
at the perspective of like how I'm being productive in terms of who should I be managing, like you said, the context versus time. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, definitely, I think great advice in terms of that aspect. So another thing I want to talk about is something that's a little bit more, it's not something that students like to talk about as much. And mainly because I wouldn't, it's not taboo per se, but it's something that we don't like to admit that exists, especially in a very competitive environment. And that's referring to competition among students or in
Mhm.
general when you compare yourself versus another student.
Mhm.
The harsh reality is that the college application process is a competition in itself because you are competing with other students in terms of getting a spot into college, being admitted to that school, and you're being compared as well. And there's a lot of different factors. Obviously, there's no way we can determine what are the main factors that got you in or got you rejected because there's like test scores, GPA, extracurriculars, your essays, you as a person as well. So I guess if you wanted to talk to, at least in your opinion, what was your perspective on like competition or comparing yourself towards others, and like what would be like your, I guess, general advice on tackling this issue? Because I know it's definitely something that is very prevalent in, at least in high schools that are very competitive. And I don't think it's even like really a big stereotype, but in the Asian American community, we're so pressured into being the best students that the
Mhm.
competition and comparisons only get fueled even higher. So I guess what's your take on that?
Yeah. I definitely think there's two gradations when it comes to actual competition. I think most people suffer from the first gradation, which is they compare people to themselves to others, and that makes them feel bad. I think the second one is much more rare when you compare someone you're actually jealous about them. At least in the community that I was in, I definitely suffered a little bit, but I wouldn't say as much as my peers of comparing myself to others, especially when if you're failing and your friends are succeeding, it gets pretty sad and you feel really down. It's sometimes even worse than if your friends just weren't succeeding at all. Like it's sometimes better that you don't know your friends are succeeding when you're failing, because it just makes you feel worse. Uh, Definitely, or they're failing too. That makes you feel better. Yeah, I definitely felt that though, and I think that's something though that should be natural. It's not a bad thing to compare yourself occasionally. It's more so how you react to it. And I think that the people who react with jealousy are the ones that um, unfortunately are going to be helped by it. There's a great quote that says, "Envy only hurts the envious." Right? It's like, just because you're jealous of someone doesn't mean they're going to suddenly do worse or you're going to do better. Jealousy is a state. It's not something that's actually going to do anything for you. It's not an action. It's just a state of being that often is from helplessness and the fact that you don't feel like you can get something. And jealousy is when you believe that they have something you don't. But inspiration is the belief that they have something that you can also have, right? There's no need for this zero sum game. Now, unfortunately, college applications are an inherently zero sum process, but this should not mean that you have to have a zero sum mindset when applying for it, because most people are pigeonholing themselves down a single college, and then they think, oh, if there's only 3,000 seats, that means that this person gets it, I get one less seat that I potentially can fill. That's not really true. If you think about the total number of colleges in general, if you're not pigeonholing yourself down a single college, there is definitely a college that will take you.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
and the reason, and of course, maybe some people might outrank you, but that's not necessarily like, it shouldn't be getting into your head in the end. And you'll realize, especially later, like I mean, at least I did, and I'm saying for students, you'll recognize that the people who really achieve high and really go to a different level of competition, they play by a different set of rules than everyone else. And by that, I mean, they tackle different spaces that are often not as competitive, in the sense that they don't feel they need to compete. They have this aura where because by not being competitive, it's almost as if you're displaying this aura that you are so good or you are so dedicated that you don't feel there's a need to compete over some zero sum game. It's very, very admirable to not have to result in these zero sum mindsets and to feel that you have to be jealous, but instead to be inspired, because it just conveys this sense that you have your own success and you're able to achieve it. People who tackle problems, most people are tackling problems on a very on a much more superficial level. If you're tackling problems like getting a good grade or being the first in a competition, of course you're going to be descending into these zero sum mindsets. And in fact, that's what you see a lot of times. But the people who really achieve much aren't tackling these same problems. They aren't thinking about just being first in these competitions. That's usually not the highest thing on their bucket list. The highest thing on their bucket list is establishing a system of principles that they feel can benefit themselves in the long run in life, or they're building a resume or like achievements that help build them towards a career. It's never about an end result. It's about a process of definitely results. I don't want to give like hackneyed results, like, oh, you should just trust the process, not the results. Everyone's concerned about results, but the people who are really concerned about the process are completely focused on different types of results. And those different results just completely change the way they play. They just play in a fundamentally different game, and they don't have to fight over the scraps that other people think they have to. And I think that's really important. You should be tackling problems that most people aren't even thinking about, because when they're bigger problems, you're trivializing the smaller ones. And if you're worried about, changing the world, you're not going to be as worried about grades, because you need to get good. I mean, actually, no, if you're well, not necessarily, but the idea is like, you wouldn't be as worried. You shouldn't be as concerned about grades, but more about changing the world. And if you really are focused on bigger problems, your grades will naturally, be good if you're excited and you're passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I definitely, especially on the statement about its process. And I guess, you approached this question in a very interesting way, obviously. I think it's just, in the environment that we grew up in, it was very competitive. Some people would argue maybe cutthroat, or, there was a lot of comparisons among other students. I think, like you mentioned, it is a natural process where you're going to face that. It's just something you've grown up in. It's hard to get over it pretty easily. I think, at least for me personally, I was able to shift kind of like, I guess, my narrative of like, just having this entire competitive mindset to more of like cooperation and actually more of a profound respect. Like you mentioned, you can be jealous of a person, and that is something that is rare, or you can just completely hate the person and try to put them down to put yourself in a higher position. But I would say that, it's funny, because once you finish the entire college application process, or even after once you've graduated high school, it kind of changes, because, looking back at it, when I was looking back at times that maybe I would have been a little bit more competitive or whatnot, instead of looking at it that way, I think I realized like, oh, I didn't hate the kid because he was good, or like what like that, because obviously I was jealous to some extent. But now it's more like, what? I actually respect that kid. Like, I have so much respect for the person, for what he's accomplished. I understand for the fact that, yeah, maybe if in the comparison mindset, this student is better than me, but I'm not going to put him down for it. I have to give him credit and respect that. Like, if he's doing academically well, if he's doing things that are actually changing the world, in my opinion, even though I think it's probably better than what I'm doing, I respect it, rather than trying to be like, oh, okay, I need to get to a standard, because in the end, we all have our different pacings. So I personally think that, when you're comparing yourself to someone else, you really can't compare yourself, because you're mutually exclusive to yourself.
Exactly.
You all have your own independent pathways. So, for example, like what you do is amazing. And I honestly think, in my opinion, you do a lot better things than what I have done. So obviously I have so much respect for you in that way. But like, no, like, it's cool. Like, in that sense, like, for example, I have like respect for those people. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh, I need to be that person, or I need to be better than him. No, because, conversely, maybe if I said, oh, I respect this kid, that kid might say to me, oh, I respect him even more than probably he respects, like kind of like that. This is a weird situation, but we all have different perceptions. We all have different pathways of how we determine success or how we get to our, like you said, it's not really an end result, but when we get to that end result, we all have different ways of approaching it. So I think it's like you said, it definitely is a procedural kind of thing you have to take into consideration. And I guess just hopefully we can get to a mindset where even though competition will always exist, we can kind of understand that it's not the most important thing in the world. You have to understand that every individual is going to be different. And yeah, I guess just to wrap up the entire video, I guess what are your other, I guess, general advice for prospective college applications? That can be about the college application process or just life advice in general. Like, what would you tell them if this was like the only thing they heard from the video?
Sure. Before that, I just want to say thank you, Christian, for organizing this. This has been really, really fun. Really admire what you're doing, especially all that stuff, like all these different people you've been interviewing recently, which is great. So I guess I'll give first, like just as extension of the last point I was making, when it comes to competition, if you're trying to avoid that, my biggest advice is don't pigeonhole yourself. And by that, I mean, don't pigeonhole yourself by the choice of college for sure. That's a superficial interpretation. But also don't pigeonhole yourself in any, do not ever put yourself in a closed environment with other people, because the world is not a closed environment. Or maybe it is many different closed environments, but you have the ability to choose which one you actually want to go into. Just because you think you're good at biology doesn't mean you have to suddenly compare yourself to all types of like all the other biology competitors, right? Like it's more so, there's so many niches that you need to fill. And definitely you shouldn't, if you feel that you are being outclassed in a discipline, which will inevitably come, right? Don't feel sad. You should be inspired. I think there's a very thin line between jealousy and inspiration. And that's something that I feel that almost everyone who gets inspired kind of has a little jealousy, but it's almost, but they turn it into something where instead of because they have something I can't, it's more so because they have something I can. It's right. It's a very different mindset. And then I guess my second advice in general regarding ambition is that the quality of your life and your as a student and your achievement will never be determined by your success. It's going to be determined by the problem you choose to face. Not quantity of your successes or the size of your resume, but the quality of your problems that you're currently facing and the size of your ambition. And the reason why I say this is because if you ask anybody in school, you can tell a lot based off their situation just by asking them a question: what's your biggest problem right now? And for a lot of students, if the biggest problem is, I want to get, I want to get this grade so I can just pass the class with the least amount of effort, you kind of already know how much they've achieved, because that's their biggest problem, right? Because the reason why is because when you succeed, you're not going to suddenly have less problems. Instead, you have to tackle even bigger problems and even more problems. So, and when you ask people how well they know the problem they're trying to tackle, a lot of the times they spend even more time researching the problem than the solution, because you can find a solution to anything, right? And engineers have a really big problem where they're trying to find solutions to problems that don't exist. You should, right? Like more so than just being solution focused, you should be problem focused, because most people are too solution focused. They think that the problem is going to go on their silver platter like a job, right? But that's not what's going to happen. The people who really innovate are thinking about problems that nobody else is yet ever even imagining about. Like for example, the iPhone was a good one. Like the iPhone's a good example of a technology that was invented that before it was invented, nobody wanted one. But after it was invented, everyone wanted one. Before the iPhone came out, nobody ever imagined or even thought of wanting an iPhone. And Steve Jobs, and of course the many engineers at Apple, basically asked this question: how can we design something that's so innovative and so groundbreaking that people would want, they just know they want it the minute they see it? And I think that in conclusion, that's really what you guys got to be focused on. If your problem isn't about, like, say, doing the least effort and getting a passable result, but instead is like you have a very specific subsection of the world that you want to fix. And that's even better than saying that you want to pursue your passion. And the reason being is, like, don't follow your passion, follow your problems, because your passions will change, because your passions are based off your identity and what you think you're good at. I really doubt that a lot of people are going to be as passionate about, let's say, CS if they realize there's a person who's like 10 years old and can code better than they do, right? You lose passion very quickly, and it's very easy to get discouraged if you base your entire identity around a passion. But if you base your entire identity around a problem, let's say like solving hunger or economic stability, or like artificial intelligence. And like for me personally, it's like boosting the economy through artificial intelligence or like helping displaced workers. It's much better because you're going to find the passions and skills along the way. along the way, you're going to have a context, and you're going to be able to remember what's important and forget what's not important. And your mind is going to work at its best, and it's going to be working on this problem for many many years. And over time, I think the result would definitely be sustainable.
Yeah, for sure. No, and obviously, I think it was, it's really great advice, And obviously, just like I mentioned earlier, we want to like I mentioned, thank you so much for being here with us. It's an absolute honor to have you talk here. You're really
Thank
such
you.
an
Likewise.
inspiration. Like even for me, like it was very inspirational to hear you talking. Even though you are a great Lord to me, I actually had so much respect for you. And I looked up to you as a person because like, everything you're
Same
accomplishing.
here.
Yeah, and then obviously obviously the semester probably didn't end as intended with the entire virus or whatnot. But obviously, I guess another thing to mention is obviously congrats on graduating. Can't wait to see what you can do upcoming into the future years from now. I know you're going to be going out there killing it, doing great things. Um, but yeah, obviously we hope that everyone watching this gets a lot of information. I definitely think whether you agree or disagree with what he's saying, definitely take it into consideration. Obviously, we're not trying to say that what we're saying is the right answer. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
all entitled to our own opinions,
Yeah,
but it's
absolutely. I could be totally wrong about
yeah,
all these things.
yeah.
Don't
But I
worry
mean, no,
about it.
it's up to your, you watch who the person watching this, what your interpretation of all this
Mhm.
is. But obviously, we hope that at least you gain some value from listening to this video. And yeah, I guess just other than that, thank you so much, Braden.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christian.